Hi BookTube, it's Jackie from Jackie's Literary Corner, and this is my first time filming in my new chair, which I just noticed is a little bit higher up than the other one. And this nice thing on my wall, a book tree. And I think we're going to, and I think I mentioned this, that we might get a decal that's words to go above the tree. I did kind of, first I thought, I want to get the Dr. Seuss quote, but then my mom was telling me it should probably be the same as that one up there, if you can, right there. So many books, so little time quote, so it should be like the same, so it will like match. So, I don't know which one I'm gonna get. Maybe it's Stephen King ones, or there's the George R. R. Martin one. There's the quote by the author of who must not be named quote, because I still like the quote even though it's by her. I still kind of like it. It's a good quote. And it's so hard because that situation is so hard because Harry Potter, people still feel such love for Harry Potter, but she kind of ruins it with her stupid comments. But anyway, so let's talk about what's going on with my reading right now. So I have read 3 books so far, 2 novellas, and then one regular sized book, which is Hard Times by Charles Dickens. I ended up bringing and the 2 novellas in The Death of Ivan Ilyich. My plan was, I was all like, I'm gonna read The Death of Ivan Ilyich first, and but I had forgot that isn't the first novella in that collection. The first novella in that collection is Family Happiness, and then The Death of Ivan Ilyich. So I read that one first, and then I read The Death of Ivan Ilyich. And both were great, both were good. And it's Tolstoy, his writing is great, and it's very readable. I know, some people, because of the size of, like, War and Peace, or Anna Karenina even, people feel that it's intimidating, but really, at least for me anyway, it's more about, it's a big commitment. It's going to take a lot of time to read those 2 books. But I do want to read those. And I'm going to try to read at least, I don't know if I'll finish them this year, but I do want to try to go through them some more. But there's a lot of tomes I need to finish. And one of my goals this year is to read some of my chunky books and at least get some of them finished. And I am very close to finishing Count of Monte Cristo. Again, it's one of those books where I gotta have one day where I read like 100 or more pages to get, to make progress in it. And I've obviously made a lot of progress in it. It's just, if I read only a little bit, then I'll keep putting it down and will still keep taking me a long time. And now granted, like, people whose videos I watch that talk about tips for reading chunkier books, whether it's a classic or a contemporary book, and contemporary is a book that's written now. I'm not talking about like contemporary, the contemporary genre, but they do say, remember, it does take a long time to read these books, especially the classics. So I know that, I understand that, but I do want to finally finish it. It's just, as I've said before, it will be a weird feeling when I do, because on the one hand, I'll be so relieved, and a part of me will be kind of sad, and then a part of me will be shocked when I finish it. It won't be like, oh my god, I actually finished this book, because I've been reading it for so long. So I'll have very mixed feelings about that when I finally do, but I do want to finish it. But other than that, now that one, I feel like Dumas isn't as readable, but I think Tolstoy, despite the length of his books, his bigger books, his actual novels, he's very readable. It's not, it might be a little bit more wordy than, Brandon Sanderson or Stephen King, but it's still readable, like both those authors. Both those contemporary authors. But anyway, so Family Happiness was essentially about this young woman who both her parents have died. I think one of her parents had just died at the start of the book, and the other parent had died long before the book started. And it's her sister, and their nanny. And she's 7, to keep in mind she's 17. And also keep in mind this is a classic, so, and an old family friend of their father's, who's younger than their father, but is definitely older than her, like 5-10 years older than her, comes and, reconnects with them, and he knew her as a little girl, but then now she's a woman. She's 17, gonna be in a few years a legal adult, and they have a lot in common, and they enjoy their conversations together, and they start to fall for each other, and she becomes so infatuated with him, and he with her, but he also knows that there's a big age difference between the two of them, so he's aware of it, obviously. But, she's like, I don't care. I will be perfectly content. And, he's like, you're young and free. You don't need to be saddled with an old man and be stuck married to me. But she keeps on insisting, so they get married. And unfortunately, they learn the hard way that things aren't going to be nice and pretty forever. Things are not going to, and, like, he's perfectly content hanging out at the house. And I'm kind of like him. Like, I'm cool. I don't need to go to the social scene and party and stuff. I'm a very shy person. I'm content with opening a book. I mean, I'm sure a lot of readers, not all of them. I mean, there are a lot of readers that are also like socializing as well. But I'm one of those readers, the stereotypical reader who is perfectly fine being by myself, and so is this character, Sergei Mikovich. I still do not know how to say a lot of Russian names. I don't want to keep having to ask my dad, because then I'll have to ask him again and again, because I keep forgetting the pronunciation. Like, I need to get an audiobook, but the thing is that my audiobook option is Libby, and eventually I'll have to return it within a week. So, so those are my excuses for that. But as I was saying, he's perfectly content chilling at home, being there, spending time with his mom, because his mom lives with them, and he's just fine with his, just chilling at home. And he also kind of doesn't tell her what's going on with his work, doesn't, shelters her and wants her to be happy and have no worries and stuff. And she gets so frustrated with that and impatient with that, and finally one day snaps at him. But then at the same time, she also feels guilty, because he's like, I'm trying to make you happy and trying to protect you, and I love you, and all that. And it's just like, so eventually, but he also feels guilty, and which kind of annoyed me that she felt bad when I think she, but I also understand why he probably eventually does get mad at her too, because he warned her. He told her ahead of time, you don't want to be saddled with an old man. And she insisted, because she's a young, impressionable girl who was caught in the rosy gloom of love, first love. And they go to Moscow, to the city. It's like, I think Moscow for them was like going to New York or Washington, D.C., for us, or even California, I don't know. And he takes her to the social scene, and he thinks eventually she'll get tired of it and realize that the social scene is not that great, and the people are boring and hypocrites and all that. But she really blends in really well. They like her, they fawn over her, and she has such a good time. And he gets frustrated and annoyed because he doesn't want to be there, but he wants to be a supportive, loving husband. And they just slowly learn that things are different, things get complicated and messy, and it will never be the same kind of happiness they had before, the same rose-colored fantasy of love. And they have to learn that love involves compromise, and it's not just about passion, it's about, compromise and working together and blending well together and getting along together, and you're living together for the rest of your life, and you're tied to that person, you're committed to that person. Unless you're one of those idiots who thinks they can get away with cheating, and that, it's just a marriage contract. I just, promise to be with this person forever and love them and respect them, yet I'm going to go cheat on them and hook up with someone else because I'm attracted to someone else now, or I've fallen in love with this person, so I'm going to make it easy for myself. But But anyway, so it's a really interesting look at marriage and the difference between younger and older people. Like I'm in now, maybe this is my 21st century brain, but I personally, even though I have crushes on older actors all the time, you know, and I even joke when I actually like a crush on an actor that's a little bit closer to my age, like a little closer to my 31 years, and I don't want my books to fall off, or in the opposite direction and a little bit younger. I joke about it and say, oh, I'm finally crushing on someone that's closer to my age, but yeah, I do like a lot of older actors, but at the end of the day, first of all, it's just the crush. I know that. And a lot of them are like, I don't know them on a personal level. I just know the persona they show on screen and in interviews and stuff like that, and at like conventions, because a lot of them, let's face it, a lot of them do superhero type movies and stuff like that they get to go to conventions. So I don't know them that well, and though some of them are married, so it's like it's a safe crush, and I also will never act upon it. I'm not that kind of person that's impulsive like that and will act upon it, and I don't take it that seriously. I don't think I'm in love with any of those actors. And with that being said, my 21st century brain can't process the idea of being with someone that's much older than you, like 10 or more years older than you. To me, it's just weird. But at the same time, I do believe love is love. If you fall in love with someone that's a bit younger than you, or a bit older than you. I mean, although I think I would be a little more open to someone that's younger than me than someone that's much older than me. Because my maturity level is not, I feel like it's not the same kind of level most people my age would be at. So I think it would be less weird if they were younger than me. If they were like 10 years younger than, or they at least need to be legal. Like, over 18 at least. But, anyway, that's, but with that being, that's personal. I bring that up because, there's a big age difference between the two characters. I'm pointing at, my books here, but I don't have the book here. It's probably over on the other side of my room in, the basket. Because but it's like she's 17, and she only got a couple more years until she's 18, and then in her 20s. But it's still, of course, I also think about that. Well, then again, I still kind of liked the relationship between Rochester and Jane, and their age difference was almost the exact same as the age difference between this girl and the So I guess I feel a little hypocritical because I shouldn't be rooting for them then if this one bothers me too. If that relationship bothers me in Family Happiness, then this one should bother me too. The romantic relationship in Jane Eyre. And she definitely, Mia, forgive me, I'm not pronouncing her last name correctly. I know that because I think Tom Hiddleston, when he was interviewing for Crimson Peak, I think he pronounced it the correct way you're supposed to say it, but I don't remember what that is. Mia I cannot say it because I think she's Australian. I think. But I don't know that. I wish I could remember how to pronounce. But Mia W. I'm just gonna call her Mia W. In the recent Jane Eyre adaptation, she looks like me. She looks very young. I think she's in her 20s, but like me, she looks like a teenager. Although I hope I'm finally starting to look at least considered to be a little bit older. Or at least people are assuming I'm a little bit older. At least in 21, at least. So that's the other thing. She does that version. She does look really young. Some of the other versions, she at least looks like she's in her. The actresses look like they're in their 20s, even though Jane's 18. And I do kind of am, as I've gotten older, I do kind of have a problem with that kind of with that couple anyway, because I think Jane could have done better. But I also feel like there weren't many options. And you could say that for Maria, that's her name, the main character in Family Happiness. You could say that for her too, that she didn't have any other options. She wasn't exposed to any other men. She wasn't exposed to any boys or anything. I mean, I'm sure she went to school, of course. But like Jane and Jane Eyre, Jane went to an all-girls school. And she had been exposed to very few men and males in her life. Just her male cousin, the headmaster at Lowood School, and it was an all-girls school, so no boys. And then there were a few male workers and stuff, but she hadn't been the only two males that she was ever exposed to that are close. Were Rochester and then St. John. Other than that, she had not much male experience with males. And she's also very naive and has been bullied her whole life and didn't get a lot of love in her life. When people loved her, she had lost them. Those people that did love her, show her kindness. So in her case, I understand why she fell for him. And in Family Happiness, I kind of understand too. Like, again, just like Jane, she had no experience with any other males, or very little experience with males. And she was young and naive, and these two people connected on an emotional level. But she does stay loyal to him, even though she gets tempted in the story. She stays loyal. And they make a pretty decent life for themselves. And they even have kids. Even though things are not the same between them anymore, they discover a new kind of happiness, a new kind of contentment. So she sticks with it, even though some people would probably want to run away and get out of the situation. She doesn't. She still holds on to the love she felt for him when she first fell in love with him, or became infatuated, or whatever you want to call it. And then, of course, the death of Ivan Ilyich it starts out, it kind of is a little unique, because it starts out telling us that this guy, Ivan Ilyich, has died, and it's all about the grief of we see his wife and co-workers grieving. He's a government official, and I think he's like a judge or something, and his wife and kids and his co-workers are grieving. And then we get to where the rest of the story is what led up to his death. We get a summary of how he met his wife, them getting married, and then them having kids, and him wanting a promotion and wanting to get a better job situation. And I get this, he's like unsatisfied with his life. He feels constantly restless. And he only marries his wife because it makes sense. It's practical, and she's beautiful, and but there's no real love between them. And in fact, his wife comes off as selfish because she doesn't care. And when he starts to get sick and realize I'm probably gonna die, she doesn't believe him. She thinks he's full of crap, and so does his oldest child, his daughter. They think they're annoyed by it. They think he's just a nuisance, and he starts to feel horrible about that. But he's in so much pain. And it's just too much for him. And only his son is the only one who seems to actually, and his butler and are the only people who seem, and I think one of his fellow co-workers notices it too. They're the ones who see that he's sick and they feel bad for him, and his butler tries to take care of him. He even is willing to hold up his feet so the guy can be comfortable. So he's the only one who shows kindness. And even though he's someone who works for him, and sometimes the way employees are treated can, for rich people, is seen as really negative and unfair, and they can get a little resentful. And this guy has to constantly take care of the sick man, hold up his feet every night, and, sit with him and stuff. So I can, you gotta wonder. I hope there wasn't any resentment. Because I feel bad for the rich dude, because he didn't mean it like that. He was just really sick. And he believes he's dying. And like I said, I feel like his wife just didn't care. she just wanted to be married to the rich guy, the rich, successful man. And it's all about, and a lot of the messages I think in here are about appreciating life and appreciating what you have and never taking, and living a full and happy, contented life. Like, you don't have to try to have the best job or the best home or the best, the best family, the best, married to the best woman, or, depending on your definition of that. And you just need to live a good, happy life. And I think people get that definition mixed up constantly. And it shouldn't be about material things, says a person who collects books. But, and also spend a bit of money on a nice chair. But at the end of although I feel like I don't have to have a whole bunch of stuff. I only want certain things. Yes, I do want certain things that have to do with my hobbies and stuff. But this book, clearly the message is, it's not about material things, it's about appreciating your life and living your life. And it's not about trying to achieve the best of everything. And, everyone's definition of success is different. And, sometimes people get it mixed up. Like, his idea of success is having the good job, having a good, a rich, beautiful wife, and having kids, and, like, making a lot of money. And it's not about that. And he feels like he questions that at one point. He starts to question that as it gets worse. He wonders if this is his punishment for not living a good life, not living a happy life. Which I guess in a way, both the novellas are all about happiness and what makes you happy, and knowing what's a good life, what is good, and appreciating what you have. Like, both of those are that I think both those novellas are both kind of like that. And then the actual novel I read is Hard Times. Okay, so like with Stephen King, I always end up taking forever to read some of his longer books, and I will start one, but then all of a sudden decide, I want to read that one, especially because I will hear people like Kate Howe, or Katie from Books and Things, talking about, I'm reading this Dickens, or this is my favorite Dickens, and I feel like, now I want to get that one, I want to read that one. She says that her favorite, Katie from Books and Things says her favorite Dickens is Our Mutual Friend, so I immediately went to buy it, and I was like, I'm going to read that one. But then, she also talked about how great Dombey and Son is, and Kate Howe was like, I think I'm going to read that one next, because Kate Howe or someone else talked about how great that book is. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I want to read that one too now, but then I'm thinking, but I should probably read his first published work. And actually, I'm in a group. I decided to sort of half-heartedly participate in Caroline Marie Reed's and Emmy's book club, that Dickens versus Tolstoy, a Dickens versus Tolstoy book club. It was inspired by the Knowledge Squared, or Intelligence Squared, where they did a debate. They did the debate of Dickens versus Tolstoy. They had professors talking about the text, which when they, and then they would have actors performing the scenes from the books and basically comparing the two. And they even asked the actors which one they preferred. And really, first, I gotta admit, the first thing that brought me to that debate was Tom Hiddleston, because he's one of the actors that is reading it, because it's very nice to know that he seems to be a reader. And so that's what brought me. And then it was just a plus that it was a Dickens-Tolstoy debate, but comparing those two. Although, I don't know, I might have saw that first, and then saw, Tom Hiddleston. I don't know which one which one got my attention about that debate first, that it was Dickens versus Tolstoy, or that Tom Hiddleston was part of it. I don't remember. But, when I first commented on either Caroline or Emmy's video about it, I said on my comment, that it's because, I gotta admit, it's because of Tom Hiddleston at first, but then, it was a plus that it was a debate between them two, between those two authors, discussing not between them because those guys are dead, but I mean like it was about which one people preferred. I feel like I can't decide. I mean, and also to be fair, I haven't read enough Tolstoy to really make a fair, uniform decision on which one I liked better. So I'm kind of participating in that, but I don't have the first book that they're reading. Their first Boyhood. That's why. I just realized I was searching for that book on Thrift Books and I typed in the wrong. I typed childhood. It's boyhood. That's why I got it wrong. I think why they didn't find it. But they're reading their first book in January is Boyhood. Youth. Boyhood, Youth, and some. I can't remember the title, but I don't have that one. But I did put it on Thrift Books or Book Depository, and or I scheduled an appointment with at Book Castle for tomorrow at 2. So I'll look for it then as well. If I find them, then I'll get on Thrift Books. Because right now, because of this chair being really expensive, this chair I'm sitting on, I have to wait. I'm gonna have to wait a few months before and get a few more paychecks before I spend any more money online. Before I decide to put any book orders in from Thrift Books or even get my first order and my second order on Book Depository. But anyway, so I'm participating in that, and February's book is The Big Book Papers, which is Dickens' first published novel, and I need to get back into that. The problem is, it kind of threw me off because, I mean, I kind of had some idea what I was getting into with that one, but I started it, and it was, and it kind of got like, I lost interest temporarily, and so I want to pick it back up again and get into it again, so I'm going to do that in February. That's one of the ones I'm going to read in February. But anyway, so I decided, long story short, I need to get a Dickens book that I can finish, so I picked up Hard Times, which is one of his shorter novels, and it was okay. It was, I think most Dickens fans prefer his longer works. But this one was good. It was kind of a simple plot, and it still had the signature Dickens things, like exaggerated but compelling characters, a writing style that you either love it or you hate it, and a very intriguing plot. Although I do prefer his more convoluted plots, even though it takes me forever to get through them. This one, you have our main character, Tom Gradgrind, although I don't know if you could call him the protagonist. I don't know if Louise is the protagonist, but Tom Gradgrind, I think he's a headmaster at a school, and he is all about facts and logic, and everything is no fanciful thoughts, no wondering thoughts, facts, only facts for him. And he's like, I instill this in my students, and I instill this in my own 2 children, his daughter Louisa and his son young Tom. And it kind of has consequences for them, because they don't have any balance in their life. And Tom becomes a gambler and wants to continue asking for money from his sister, and he is just a very bitter, angry young man, is not happy. And then you have the sister, Louisa, who has no feelings, doesn't express any feelings whatsoever, and except for her brother. And she's always constantly there for him, doing stuff for him, and she ends up getting into this loveless marriage, with this guy who thinks a lot like her father, and her father thinks it's a good marriage. She should get married to this guy, even though there's no love between them. And she only agrees to marry him because then she can use his money to give to her brother. And it's like, and things just go from there. They, neither one of them has a good life. Like I said, they have no balance in their lives, and it ruins them. It was was still a good plot, very simple. Like I said, I prefer his more convoluted plots, but it was still pretty good, you know? And again, it had the signature elements of Dickens. But it just, at times, it kind of bored me a little bit. It wasn't the most thrilling story. It wasn't the most engaging. I was at the edge of my seat, biting my nails, wanting to find out wanting to know what happens next, and feeling like, oh, I want to read this now. But it was still good, and I liked the characters, and I thought, you know, the antagonist, the guy that Louisa marries, he was very funny, and he kept referring to himself in third person, which I'm surprised I can't remember his name, because you would think I would, because he kept saying, Josiah, something Josiah, I wish I could remember. It was another weird name, which that's another thing I find is the names Dickens comes up with for his characters. And I think the names just kind of reflect who the characters are as well. You would, like I said, you would think I remember the guy's name because of how he constantly says it. And I feel like you could make a drinking game out of how many times the word facts appears in the text. But yeah, the guy refers to himself as in third person, and because he's so arrogant and thinks, oh, no one can compare to me, I'm the best, and as, you know, and I feel like whenever a character in a Dickens novel either repeats a word or constantly repeats a word about themselves, or if they say, you know, their name in third person, then that usually means you're not supposed to like that. I think that could mean you don't like that character because they're so annoying, because they're supposed to be so annoying because they do constantly do that. And yeah, it does that. It annoys me. But at the same time, it was very funny. It was like, really? You know, we get who you are. We know your name. We understand who you are. It's just like, oh no, apparently I don't remember it. And it does have, and the novel does have a happy ending. Most of his novels do have happy endings. Although there was some sadness for one character that I did like that didn't get what they wanted, and I kind of felt bad for the brother. But he was so mean to his sister and took her for granted, and so he was so pathetic. And the guy who ends up falling for the sister, Louisa, even though she's married, she's like, he is like, okay, you gotta be nicer to your sister and not to your, and the guy, and Tom is like, oh yeah, sure, of course I'll be, you know, and he's still, like, by the end of the story, he disowns her, because she doesn't give him what he wants. He's like, you suck, so you're not my sister anymore, you don't do what you didn't do for me when I wanted you to do, even though he was asking for too much, expecting her to go like, la-di-da-di-da, I'm gonna ask for money from my husband, even though my husband's an asshole. And then there's also the angelic, pure figure in the story of a little girl. I feel like a lot of times it's children. Oftentimes it's a female character. She's so good and she represents imagination and wonder and fanciful thoughts that the Thomas Gradgrind is against, and he can't seem to convert her. I mean, she reminds me a little bit of Sarah Crewe from A Little Princess. Now, I haven't read the book, but I know the story because I've seen the movie, the one from the 90s, not the Shirley Temple version. And I just realized really the only actor I know from that movie, except for the girl who becomes Sarah's friend, the little servant girl. But I also recognize the girl who plays her father in that version. The actor who plays Sarah's father in that version, Liam Cunningham, he's also in Game of Thrones. Or was, since that show's done now. But, yeah, she kind of reminds me of Sarah Crewe a little bit. And, you know, I know, Dickens, yes, he writes in a world that existed, not in a make-believe world. He writes his story takes place in London or somewhere in England, and so it's a real place. But there's even though it's not fantasy, it doesn't have magic or dragons or witches or even vampires or anything like that. It's a real place with real people. And there's no supernatural or magic involved, or even science fiction then for that matter, but it still feels kind of whimsical and magical and mysterious. There's a sort of whimsy to his stories that it doesn't, even without like the literal fantasy elements, it still feels, it feels whimsical in its own way. Which I think that's why people still love Dickens. Like, even if he's long-winded with his writing style, there's something magical about his work, and something fantastical, even though it's not really fantasy. Oh, my mom might be home. I think I just heard her. That's what's great about her job, is that she can come home, or she potentially comes home early, like even if she's working that day. Okay, so as far as what I am reading right now, okay, so I'm participating in Holly Hearts Books' a medieval-a-thon. It started on the 10th, so it's in the first 3 days, and, which, by the way, I love those kinds of readathons, the ones where there's a story, and people will create all these different, like, scenarios, or they'll create a map, or character personalities, and, I find those readathons where, you can imagine and create your own story, like, it's almost like role play in a way, without the actual role play. I love those kinds of readathons. So sometimes I think my Myth Taker might be only a week long, and that's kind of what bugs me, is that I can't read a lot of books, and books I would want to read for this readathon in a week. I can't do that. But Holly Hearts Books, she made it a month long this time, so it goes from January 10th to February 10th, which I really appreciate it. Although I still don't know if I'm going to be able to complete it. But that's okay, it's still fun, even if I don't complete it. Not a big deal, but... So, for this one, she decided you are trying to get a profession. So, my first thought was the bard profession, but then I watched someone else's TBR, and they said they're going to go for 2. So, 2 professions. So, I decided I'm going to go for 2 professions, too. So, I'm going for the bard and the clergy. And, I'm reading the first book for each of those. So I'm going to do, if I can, go back and forth, like, read 2 books at the same time. One for that profession, one for the bard profession, one for the clergy profession. So, for the bard profession, I am reading Gardens of the Moon by Stephen Garrison, the first book in the series, Malazan series, and the prompt is, let's see if I can remember it. What is the prompt? Read a book. A great first line. So that's the prompt for that first prompt. So let me see. I kind of cheated a little bit. I had already started this book. I wonder if I should count that as the first. So the first, I'm using this as the first line, even though there are some poems. There's kind of poem type things in the beginning, but I went ahead and counted this as the first line. The stains of rust seem to map a lead on the seas, black on the seas, on the black pock surface of mock's vein. So I figured that was a really interesting, really, like, intriguing first line. Now, not everybody might not agree, but I think it's a good first line. Which is so funny. First lines are always, again, it's another thing that's very subjective. I mean, I remember, like, I know that April from Getting Hygge with It, that's when sometimes when she's deciding on what books to read, what her TBR will be that month, she goes by, or if she does a book haul, she'll go through and read the first line of each book, and will determine if it's a great first line, in her opinion, and that's how she'll determine if, okay, I'm going to read this book now, or read it soon at least. And everybody's definition of a great first line is very different. So anyway, this is a war fantasy. See how well I can explain this. So, this Malazan Empire has been taken over by a new Empress Lasine. The old emperor is dead, and not everybody's happy, and some people are still loyal to the old emperor, and there's a war going on between, and Lasine wants to expand her empire to another part of the country, another part of the world. So they're kind of at war with that part of the world because she wants to take it over. So it's kind of like what happened with Rome and when Julius Caesar took over, or whoever. I don't know who was the first to want to expand that. I did actually get. I do have a series, a historical fiction series about that, like a fantastical version of that whole story. But I have to get the first book first before I start doing that. I haven't gotten that first book yet. So I know that next time I do a book purchase, either on Book Depository or Thrift Books, I need to get the first one of that and the first one of the trilogy, the Bartemius trilogy, which is Milgray trilogy. I need to get the first book in that because I have the second and the third one, but I don't have the first one, so I can't start that series. So that's probably the best I can really tell you. Fortunately, it's 2:11, so I'm trying to go running at 3, and it's a sunny day, so I definitely should go for my run. But I want to get 300 pages read, or 100 pages. That's my goal. That's what I'm gonna try to do. That's what I was watching. Alan from the Library in Alexandria, and he was talking about how he's been trying to. I guess he's a teacher. I guess he's a teacher. He was talking about he's read at least 100. The best way he can get through a chunker of a book is to read 100 pages every day. So I was like, no, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna mark up to 100 dog ear. I say yes, I dog ear. That's dog ear up to whatever is the 100-page mark, so I can see it, and I will try to read 100 pages. And then, although the problem is that I want to upload this as soon as possible, and I don't like hearing my voice when I'm recording, and then, although I guess I could stop it and not when I put it in there to be uploaded, and then just stop it so I don't have to hear my voice and I can read. I might do that. That way I don't skip my reading, because before I know it, it's going to be 3 o'clock. Okay, so I am also reading this. And this one is one I haven't heard a lot of people talking about. The closest I've come to this is hearing about this series is, I believe Elliot Brooks herself had these books. And she wants to read them. She had wanted to read them. This is one of those situations. I decided to pick this one because I found this at the book roast before all this happened, and I got all 4. I think it was book roast. It might have even been. Actually, no, it might not have been the book roast. It might have been the Black Castle bookshop that I got this book series. But this was one of the ones, and Elliot Brooks, speaking of Elliot Brooks again, she put it perfectly. I was trying to explain this in one of my videos, that the idea that I feel like there's a lot of books that I get into, or even shows too, where everybody has already been into them, and I get to them through other people, and I want to have some books and shows that I discover on my own, that it's not influenced by other people. And she kind of summed it up like that people want, that it's nice to discover a new series that's not super popular, that not a lot of people know about, because the thrill of discovering something on your own without anyone else's influence, and it's just your thing, it's something that you discovered, and that's what I was trying to say. It's something I want to get into, things, shows, and books that I discovered that are mine, I'm not sharing them with anyone else, at least for the moment. And the same with TV shows. It's like, I want to get into them. I don't want to share them with anyone. I want them to be my book. I discovered it, on my own. That I got into it because I wanted to get into it, because I wasn't told, oh, you should check this out, and I don't have to, and I can appreciate and enjoy it and think about it and process it without having to discuss it with other people. It's something, and so this is one that I haven't heard a lot of people, so I feel like I'm, in a way, even though technically, like I said, I think it was Elliot Brooks that I saw had these books. It was after I bought them, and it's kind of what made me say, I'm going to jump and start reading these for this readathon, because I don't want anyone else to get into him, and before I get a chance to discover them on my own. And so I haven't heard a lot. Other than that, I haven't heard a lot of people reading these books. In fact, I've never heard anyone read these books. This is my first time. My first time was hearing, but then was seeing them at either the Roast Office or Black. Actually, I think it was Black Castle. And it's only 4 books. And this first book is about our main character, Pug. He works in the palace, and I think he's an orphan. I think his parents are dead. And he runs into, when he's out in the forest one morning, he runs into I can't remember what he called him, what he said he probably is, a forester or a huntsman or something. And he takes him to hang out because it's getting late, and, so he takes him to hang out at the cottage where the castle magician lives, because he lives in, and the magician notices potential in Pug and decides to take him on as apprentice if no one else takes him as apprentice, because when they come of a certain age, when they turn 13, they will be taken on as an apprentice. And the master magician Clugan decides, I'm going to take this boy because I see he has potential. He might be a magician. And he takes him in and teaches him magic, but at this point in the story, he's kind of struggling with it. He can't seem to figure it out. And it's funny, reading this book, I decided to watch the Pixar movie Onward, which is really good. I think it's underrated. I don't hear enough people talking about it. I think it was fun and really cool. And it was kind of the same thing, where it was kind of a similar idea, where this kid, his brother realizes he has potential for magic and tries to teach him while they're on a mission to find this special stone to bring back their father from the dead so they can see him one last time. And so Pug kind of reminds me of that, because in both cases, the main character was struggling with magic, was like, I can't do it, I'm not meant for magic, or you're wrong, because clearly I can't do this. And in both cases, both boys are learning, although now Pug is younger than this kid, because this kid is 16, and Pug is only 13. And at this point in the story, he is being asked to be the riding escort for the princess, who is a snob and a brat. And she kind of gives him a hard time, calls him boy, and doesn't show any kindness or respect to him, and he ends up saving her. He just saved her life, and I don't know, I'm guessing that's going to be kind of the turning point for her to realize he is worth something. And on the back description, it says, he won, but though his courage won him a place at court in the heart of a lovely princess, he still, apparently he does win her over, so I'm guessing when she realized that he kind of saved her life, I think she's gonna start liking him and respecting him. So anyway, that's what's going on. I'm kind of focusing on both those books right now because they're kind of chunky books. Although I'm getting a little nervous. Not that it matters if I don't get a lot. But I do like the idea of being able to at least read 2 or 3 books for this readathon. But I don't know if that will happen. It's okay if it doesn't. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So anyway, that's kind of what's going on. I don't know what I'm going to read after I read those 2. Like I said, I'm going to read 100 pages of Gardens of the Moon, so I'm going to try to get to page 378 by the end of the day, and then luckily I'm off again tomorrow, although tomorrow I did schedule to make an appointment at the Black Castle Books to drop off some books, because now, like I said before, I've said this before, that Black Castle wants you to call 24 hours in advance if you want to schedule an appointment, so at 2 o'clock I'm going there and dropping off some books, and probably will get more books for credit. Although my bookshelf is kind of full, it's still full. And I think that brings me to another goal of mine that I'm going to go through. I'm going to start picking books. That's another reason why I want to pick books that I bought them and I haven't heard of them, but I have them. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about them because some of those are books that I'm like, I don't know if, I kind of like them, but then I might not. I might eventually not like them after I read them. So, like, The Last Magician, some of my Stephen King books, The Historian, The Physician. Like, basically, I have, on some of my documents that I have marking off the books I read, I have, like, a section in all of them that's, like, purchased books. So I'm basically picking, I'm going to read all my purchased books and decide which ones I'm going to read them, and then if I end up not loving them, then I'll put them in the donation pile. I'm just worried that I will not have any more donated books for a while. But anyway, so like I said, that is what's going on with me and my reading. I did think about filming another video today, but like I said, it's 2:21, so it's going to be 2:30 soon. I haven't eaten anything for lunch, and I want to get a lot of reading. I want to get some reading done before 3 o'clock, so I can, so that I could wait until 3:30, because it's not like it gets to start at 4. So read that and then go for my run between 3:30 and 4, ideally. And then, and I want to read at least a little bit of The Magician Apprentice today. Not just when I'm in bed, but actually read it when I'm sitting in my new chair, my reading chair. But I do want to get 100 pages of this done first. I'm trying to read as much as I can before I go back to work, which will be on Thursday. Because, I only get a 15-minute break, so I don't get a lot of reading time, it takes me a few minutes to get back there, and then I usually have to go to the bathroom, and so I don't get a lot of reading time when I take my 15-minute break. I mean, really, the most reading time I might get is if I have to wait for my ride to get here to pick me up. So, anyway, that is what's going on with my reading. And I would love to know what is going on, how you started this new year, this new hopeful new year. Have you got any books finished? What's your Goodreads goal this year, or are you not setting a goal this year? And what books are you hoping to read this year? We'd love to know that as well. And if you like this video, be sure to give a thumbs up. Click subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell notification below. I hope you are continuing to wear your mask and washing your hands and staying 6 feet apart from people, because this is still going on. It does exist. It's real. It's happening. It's still happening. Yes, there's the vaccine, but that doesn't mean that you can all of a sudden not be careful. You have to be careful either way, because people can still get sick. It's not like it's gone. It's just like now there's a little bit of hope. At least in that part. That's the one thing that I'm hoping. That's the one thing at least we can try to solve and figure out. Other than, unlike the rest of the stuff, it's a little bit harder to really get to a good place with that, with everything else. Anyway, and I guess I will talk to you later, and hope you guys are enjoying your reading. Bye!